As ever on a Thursday, the Kent Film Club's Chris DC is here to unpack the biggest headlines from the world of cinema. Chris, let's start with a story very close to us here, geographically at least. Historic Dockyard Chatham have announced new film location tours this summer. We know it's a very popular site for filmmakers, but give us a roster of some of those films and television series that have passed through just a stone's throw away from us.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, Call the Midwife being one obvious example. But of course, the Mission Impossible films. And I suppose I would use the excuse that the reason I watch it so many times is so that I can spot the location. And I know that there's something exciting coming up, which we'll probably come to in just a moment, where I might have that opportunity.
Excellent. Well, definitely. And oh, you've left us on real tenterhooks there. Why is there such a fascination with going on behind the scenes tours? We know, you've got the Harry Potter set visits, and there's a real tourism bump, not just in the UK but abroad, to go to filming locations. What is it about going behind the scenes at some of these sites that really appeals to people?
When I heard a few years ago, I think it's something that we've talked about, that you can go, for example, to Back to the Future or Star Wars, all these classic films, and actually go to the locations and imagine that you're actually on the set. So like a film that might be set in the 1950s, you can have a 1950s haircut. So in a way, it's actually taking a bit of the film, like an artifact from the film, home with you. I mean, back in the 90s, I'd be buying VHS tapes of all my favourite films. But the thought of actually being able to spend time on the actual set, I think in an age of CGI, that sometimes we're watching a film and you know that maybe it's not really done on location, that maybe it's all done in a computer screen. But the thought of actually going to an actual location, it harks back to the days. Think of the 1960s, Cleopatra, or even Lawrence of Arabia, when you know that these were done on location. And it gives it a sense of verisimilitude, a sense that you are part of that film.
Do you think there's you're talking about Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise, and he obviously famously came and filmed at the Historic Dockyard Chatham. Do you think there's something that really enhances it for an actor, for a director, for a writer to have that real, tangible set to play with?
I think it makes such a big difference, because when you're watching a film, I mean, you think of the James Bond films as well as Mission Impossible, it's that sense that you know that they're set on location and you want to imagine that they actually went to the trouble. We're paying our money to go and see these films. We want these film actors and all the crew to be put through their paces. I mean, we do live location screening, for Generation Y, etc. We want those films to be on location. It gives it a sense of gravitas, a sense that this is real, that they've gone to that kind of effort. And I think the thought that on our doorstep, these films were made. Tom Cruise coming in by helicopter, landing just feet away.
How else would he arrive?
Yeah.
There's, like we were saying, there's other similar tours that people can go on. The first of its kind here at the Historic Dockyard Chatham. Have you been on any tours, any behind-the-scenes tours yourself?
No, and I really want to. I mean, I suppose there's a part of me that always enjoys watching those features at the end of DVDs, the making of. But, I think I really would do so, especially as we're talking about all these films week on, week out, and actually, put my money where my mouth is, as it were, actually see those locations for real.
And heading over to the east of the county now, Whitstable Carnival Parade have announced the theme of this year's festivities is the actor Peter Cushing. To perhaps some of our younger viewers, give us a bit of background as to this actor.
Well, Peter Cushing, who lived in Whitstable, I mean, actually, he spent his remaining years in the Canterbury-Whitstable area. He used to go cycling every day. And he's somebody who, there's a plaque at the home in Whitstable. Of course, there's a famous pub named after him. He grew up in Surrey. He was around before the Second World War, spent a lot of time actually in the 1950s out of work or struggling as an actor, did a lot of radio work. He played Sherlock Holmes in film, also Doctor Who in the 1960s. There were two. I think Bernard Cribbins was in there with him as well. And he was a good friend of Christopher Lee, and we know him for those horror films. But Star Wars, was it Grand Moff
Tarkin? That's it.
So when he was brought in, apparently there were rumours that he was going to play the role that went to, the other big enemy role in that film, yes. Darth Vader, and that would have gone, and it could have gone to him. So he was somebody who seeps Hollywood history. He wrote 2 autobiographies in the late 1980s, and he lost his wife, and that was his way of. There was a feeling that he was a recluse, and John Mills was worried for him. And there's a beautiful picture actually of Christopher Lee. I think it was actually on the doorstep of Peter Cushing's home just before he died in August of 1994. So seeped in Hollywood history. And just miles away from where we're sitting this evening.
And it's a really lovely location where people can go and visit that blue plaque that you spoke about. Are there other notable actors, directors, writers that have have called Kent home in the past?
Well, one thing I was surprised at, I was watching a film, actually it was Mamma Mia 2, which I saw an outdoor screening of yesterday. Anne Dudley, who did the score, won an Oscar for The Full Monty. She is from Kent. So there's all these people, and of course, even Naomi Watts, who we think of as Australian, she spent a lot of time in Wales, but she was born not far from Sevenoaks. So, and Brenda Blethyn from Ramsgate, for example. So various people who we've often seen at the Academy Awards, nominated for Oscars, who can call Kent their home.
And of course, you mentioned Bond earlier on. Ian Fleming called, I believe it's in Dover, where he...
just outside. He lived at one point, not near Canterbury as well, in the Bigsbourne area.
Amazing. So it's a real hive for activity. And speaking of activity, you're going to be joining us a little bit later on about possibly some really exciting activity in the box office coming up with some new releases, and of course look ahead to your Kent Film Club show tonight. But now